Hey all you people, what is going on? Today we are back with another review / reliability analysis video, and this time it's on our second generation Nissan Xterra with 180,000 miles on the odometer. Is this a good SUV and how reliable is it? These are some of the questions we will be answering as we look at the Nissan Xterra's price point, design, practicality, and its performance on and off-road, including a 0 to 60 time. Then we'll dive headfirst into the Xterra's reliability and problem areas. So sit back, grab a snack, and let's get nerdy. Okay, as far as the price point goes, this is the main reason why people bought the Xterra new, because they were cheaper than their closest competitor, the Toyota 4Runner. This is also why people are considering a used Xterra, because they were cheaper than the 4Runner when they were new, and also they don't hold their value quite as well. Brand new, a 2014 Xterra would have been between $24,000 and $31,000, versus a 4Runner, which would have likely run you about $10,000 more. The same trend continues in the used market, with similar year 4Runners going for around $10,000 more. So why exactly is this? Let's take a closer look at the Nissan Xterra's design. So the Nissan Xterra is generally considered to be a handsome, smaller SUV with some really unique but also questionable design choices. Now, I personally love the styling of this, especially from the side profile, how the rear door kind of swoops up and has that iconic vertical handle. Now, making our way around the back, it has that distinct bump out on the liftgate. There's also some really cool exterior features like this little step bump out on the rear fender, which makes it easier to reach the roof, like so. Or even pretend that the floor is lava, like so. Hey Siri, call Sam. Hello. Hey, can you come outside real quick? I just want to say that the floor is lava and you're dead. The floor is lava, the floor is lava. You're dead. And then there's also this little storage bin / air deflector combo that pops up with a couple weak gas struts. And then you close it and it locks down, which is really handy to keep wet clothes in when you're camping. And on the Pro 4X model, this actually comes with integrated lights here. Okay. Now, when it comes to the interior design, that's where things start to get just a little more questionable. Everything in here is made out of hard plastics. I'm not saying that it's cheaply assembled, it's just that the materials are very cheap. There isn't a single good place to sit down your phone, or even your drinks. Everything just ends up sliding around because of that slippery surface. And everything you touch on a regular basis just seems super chintzy, with the exception of the climate control knobs and the stereo controls. From the driver's seat, visibility all around is really good. And the seating position is really good too, with the exception of this, you can't telescope the steering wheel. The seats themselves are all right. They're a little thinly padded and you can't really adjust them too much, so they can get a little tiresome on longer trips. Like many other Nissans, when this debuted in 2005, it already seemed a little out of date in certain aspects. And the production run of this model went way too long without any major updates, kind of like the Toyota 4Runner. This mid-range model is missing some key features like fog lights, an ambient temperature gauge, and a fuel economy gauge, which I think Nissan did on purpose. We'll get into that in a second. For the 2014 model year, Nissan added Bluetooth, but only for phone calls and not for actually listening to music. You still need to have a wired connection for that, which is a little odd. Other than that though, the layout is really nice, everything's easy to use and easy to see. But how about the back seats? Well, if the front is any indicator, the rear is probably going to be pretty sparse. Guess what? They are very sparse. The back seats are about as sparse as the butt end of a piece of wheat bread. We have seating for 3 back here, but really it's suited for 2 adults. Again, the materials from the front continue into the back. You could cut diamonds with this plastic. No center folding armrest, no HVAC vents anywhere in sight, no cup holders anywhere in sight. But wait, what's this? Let me just grab my drink. It's minding my own business and Hey, what are you reaching for, pal? I'm just a little thirsty. But on the plus side, the seats are reasonably comfortable. The floor is surprisingly flat, so you got plenty of room for your feetsies. And these seats fold completely flat, which brings us to our next topic. How practical is the second generation Nissan Xterra? So yeah, the back seats fold completely flat. Watch this. Take out the headrest, and boom, look at that. Same for the other side, and shaboom. A perfectly flat loading floor with almost no hang-ups at all, which makes sliding long or girthy items in and out super easy. Now, this is where the plastic interior is both a blessing and a curse. This hard plastic is very easy to wipe up and clean, which makes loading in gross and dirty items that much less disgusting. Oh yeah, open that can of tuna, boy. Smell that good tuna. Oh. This is getting weird. But this hard plastic surface means that anything you have in here as far as cargo goes, or pets, it's going to slide around and cause a lot of noise. Right here, get it.
And with just a few wipes of your ShamWow, you should be nice and clean.
There you go, all clean. So what Sam and I did in order to mitigate that amount of bouncing stuff in the trunk is we actually took the trunk mat from the 4Runner and put it in here. It has kind of a non-skid surface on the bottom, and it really helps as far as noise goes and stuff sliding around. But the most important question has yet to be asked. Will this sleep a not-so-handy car guy, the standard unit of measurement? So here's a neat little trick. You can actually remove the bottom section of these seats completely, fold this back down, and it actually gives you a couple extra inches of headroom if you decide to overland and sleep in the back. And now, shaboom, with that thing out of the way, it definitely sleeps a not-so-handy car guy. Sam and I took this overlanding up in Maine. Put the towel right here so you don't get your pants all muddy and people think you did a little poo-poo in them.
A little poo-poo.
You got poo-poo. Stay tuned for that video because you'll see exactly how we set this up for sleeping. So the Xterra can be practical in the right application, but how is it to drive? Well, let's start up front here. At the heart of the Xterra is the VQ40DE. The VQ being the engine type, the 40 being the displacement, a 4-liter, the D for dual overhead cam, and the E meaning multiple port fuel injection. These are actually pretty decent engines, making 261 horsepower at 5,600 RPM in this vehicle, and 281 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. On the road, you might be saying, this is an off-road vehicle, driving dynamics don't matter. Well, I am going to politely tell you that you're not seeing the entire picture. 95% of the time, people are going to be driving these on pavement, and there are things that Nissan could have done to make it better at doing so. But let's start with the positive first. The power from the V6 is definitely there if you rev it out, although I wish the delivery offered a little more low-end torque. The transmission. The 5-speed transmission is pretty damn good for its age and design. The gearing is really good, and when you manually downshift it, it actually rev matches into that lower gear. Although I do often find myself taking it out of overdrive on back roads like this. The all-wheel drive works very well, and it shifts from 2 to 4 very smoothly and quickly, and the low-range gearing has actually come in handy on some of our off-roading trips, including one where we got stuck on the side of a logging road, and another when we had to tow out my RAV4 from an icy mud pit. Stay tuned to see those videos. Even on those rugged logging roads up in Maine, the cabin seems really well assembled, with only a few squeaks here and there coming mainly from the liftgate, and the leaf springs being a little clunky at times. One thing we notice is that the approach, departure, and breakover angles are all very impressive. And the short wheelbase really helps the Xterra have a tight and maneuverable turning radius. Okay, now on to some of the negatives. The fuel economy is not impressive for a V6. Since there's no fuel economy gauge, we had to manually calculate this, and we came up with 17 average on one of our highway trips. The brake pedal has a long travel, and there's really not much feel to it, even after bleeding all of the brakes. The ride, as you can tell right now, is stiff and unsettled. And the steering is pretty vague despite having a quick ratio. This is because of a few things. The Xterra uses a solid rear axle with leaf springs, and on top of that, it has a very short wheelbase, which contributes to that twitchiness on the road. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong here, but a solid rear axle with leaf springs may be cheaper and potentially more robust than a car with CV axles and independent rear suspension. But from what I understand, you actually lose suspension articulation with leaf springs versus struts or coils. I hate to bring up the 4Runner again, but those use a solid rear axle with coils and shocks. And from my experience, they do ride a hell of a lot better than the Xterra. What we've done here is fit some slightly larger Falcon Wild Peaks on the Xterra with a little bit more pliable of a sidewall to help smoothen out the bumps and soften up the ride a little bit. Although it did help with the ride, we lost a little bit of cornering ability and steering feel. All right, now let's do a 0 to 60 in this thing. Allegedly, this will do the 0 to 60 in about 7 seconds and the quarter mile in 15.2 at 92 miles an hour. But we're gonna put that to the test using our specialist timing gear. Wow, it's pretty wild that there's snow in Mexico this time of year. All right. Okay, so pretty on the money for this age and mileage. Not bad. Okay, so let's talk about the reliability of the Xterra. And please, in the comments below, let me know if you guys have experienced any other issues. I'll start with the small problems and make my way up to the big problems. The evap systems get clogged. We actually had to replace the valve that's in charge of letting the excess pressure out of the fuel tank as you fill it. And that's located back here under the rear quarter panel. Not a terrible repair to do, but it is pretty common and you'll probably fail inspection. I'm not sure why this happens, but the rear doors sometimes decide they just don't want to open. We've had some typical suspension issues, sway bar end lengths, bushings, not that difficult to replace, but still kind of surprising on a then 8-year-old vehicle. When we first got the Xterra, the fan clutch was actually seized up, so it was making this awful racket noise that would increase as the RPMs increased. So we replaced the fan clutch, but the new one actually had the same issue. So I went in, changed out the silicone on the new one, which helped for a bit, but then it started seizing up again. So that leads me to believe that maybe it's a design flaw with the actual unit. Then we had another slightly larger issue with the wiper transmission linkage breaking. So we went for a while without a passenger side wiper. But the odd thing is that this issue wasn't localized to the front. The rear wiper is also stuck straight up, and I don't know why. It's like we're giving the middle finger to everyone behind us. We also currently have a pretty typical leak from the Y pipe on the exhaust, but that's pretty common up in New England here. But what's not as common is that the dealer before us actually had to replace one of the catalytic converters. I don't know why that is, he just did. Now, fortunately, frame rust isn't nearly as much of an issue on these as it is on the 4th gen Toyota 4Runners, but there are still some areas that typically rot out on here. Mainly this metal rear bumper, especially around the license plate lights. If you were in the market for an Xterra, I highly recommend getting one without the sunroof, because there's been multiple reports of the sunroofs either rattling or cracking. A couple people said their sunroof straight up exploded on them while they were driving. That's not just incredibly dangerous, but very expensive to fix. Another thing is that the Driveshaft U-joints are not greasable like the 4Runners, so if you do a lot of off-roading or towing, eventually these could fail. And again, that's pretty expensive. Okay, now there's a couple larger issues that I need to talk about. And for these problems, I'm focusing mainly on the 2005 to 2010 model years. Here's a big one, timing chain issues. I'm talking about the upper timing chain destroying the timing chain tensioner plastic guide. This can happen as early as 80,000 miles, but it all comes down to how often your oil is changed. If that timing chain gets too loose and the engine jumps timing, we are talking catastrophic internal engine damage, either a complete rebuild or a new engine. And finally, the most well-known issue, the dreaded pink milkshake of doom, of death, SMOD for short. This is when the transmission oil cooler tube breaks open inside the radiator, causing automatic transmission fluid and coolant to mix. And as this happens, positive pressure from the cooling system forces that strawberry milkshake into the transmission, totally wreaking havoc on the internal bits of the transmission and the friction material on those bands. This usually happens between 100 and 110,000 miles or so, and it will completely destroy the transmission if it goes unnoticed. The fix for this is getting a new radiator, but unfortunately, so many people just don't know about this issue. Allegedly, this only affects the 05 to 10 model years. But we've been having some scary issues with this one. The coolant keeps going somewhere. Don't look, Matt. You don't have to look. Take that dipstick out, and we'll see if it looks like a milkshake. No, you know what? No, I'm not even gonna look. If I ignore the issue, it will go away. That's how this all works. That looks completely fine. The oil looks fine. The coolant itself is clean, no oil in there. Tells me that's probably not a head gasket issue. And I don't see any leaks. So where is the coolant going? And if the heater core were going bad, wouldn't I be smelling coolant or wouldn't it be leaking? I don't know. I might have to do a little more research on this. So I don't really know what that's about just yet, but we're gonna be keeping a close eye on this. Hopefully it's just a leak somewhere. Okay, so what are my final thoughts on the 2nd Gen Xterra? If you're looking to get one of these, I would recommend looking between 2010 and 2015 and make sure it was taken care of. These years should be more reliable. Now, reliability side, the 2nd Gen Xterra is pretty dang cool. It has the looks, the ruggedness, the off-road ability, but if you get one of these, don't expect it to be the best daily driver. On that note, I will see you guys next time. Take care now, bye-bye then. Again, the materials from the front continue in the back. You could cut plastic with these diamonds. You can cut plastic with these diamonds. Duh.
SMOD was made in Germany. You know the Germans make good stuff.
Except for German timing chains. Hi, Billy Mays here. Did you accidentally intentionally put tuna all over your trunk?
Well, girl, thank you for being in my video.
I've washed this like 4 times now and it still smells like tuna.